and welcome back to the Deadology Podcast from Pencil Hill Studio, New Paltz, New York. I'm your host, Howard Weiner. 1981 was a good year to be a Deadhead, and it was a year of dreams if you were a Deadhead and a student at Lehigh University. That's because on February 5th, the Jerry Garcia Band played in Stabler Arena on the beautiful campus of Lehigh, and they returned, the Grateful Dead returned later in the year and played at Stabler Arena on September 25th. I wasn't at either of these shows in Lehigh, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, but 1981 was where it all began for me as a Deadhead. I'll just give you a brief chronology of how I got into the Grateful Dead in 1981. I remember the date, January 24th, 1981, because it was a Islander hockey game. My favorite player, Mike Bossy, became the second NHL player to score 50 goals in 50 games. But that doesn't matter at all in this story. What does matter is that on the way home, my friend played Europe 72 in the tape deck, and I fell in love with the album, and I instantly understood kind of what the obsession with the Grateful Dead was, and I immediately went out and bought a bunch of Dead records. My first show was Madison Square Garden on March 9th. Spectacular show, even though I was a bit of a novice and I didn't even realize how great it was at the time. Show number 2, I already had a nice little bootleg collection. Was at the Nassau Coliseum on May 8th. And then later in the year, on November 6th, I got to see my first Jerry Garcia Band shows at the Capitol Theater in Passaic, New Jersey. 4 days later, I doubled the pleasure and saw 2 shows early and late at the Palladium. Once again, Jerry Garcia Band, Palladium, New York City. And I was off and running. By 1982, I was ready to make that big jump into doing road trips and all in obsession with the Grateful Dead and Jerry Garcia Band. About 10 years ago, I wrote a book called Positively Garcia, Reflections of the JGB. And in this book, I did a few things, but probably the main part of the book is I took what I thought were the 13 best shows between 1972 and 1984 and wrote a chapter on each of them. And number 12, the 12th ranked show in that book was this Bethlehem show from Lehigh, Stabler Arena, February 5th, 1981. It came in a tie for 12th. And 1981 was an excellent year for the Jerry Garcia Band. 3 of the shows that made that top 13 were from that year. Let me give you a little rundown of who was in the Jerry Garcia Band at that time. It was interesting. In 1980 and 1981, you got a very stripped down Jerry. For most of both of those years, you didn't have background singers, and it was just Jerry, John Kahn, a keyboardist, and drummer. On this occasion, there were 5 people in the band. They also had Jimmy Warren on electric piano, John Kahn, obviously Jerry the Man, on drums, Daoud Shore. This was his first tour with the Jerry Garcia Band. And they also introduced Melvin Seals. This Lehigh show was Melvin's 10th show with the band. And obviously it was something that worked because he was there for the rest of the ride through 1995. He definitely brought a soulful sound, a rich, thick, soulful sound that was kind of missing since the days of Merle Saunders. So Melvin was a huge new introduction member of the Jerry Garcia Band. Essential. You can't imagine Jerry Garcia Band without the big guy Melvin. So getting on with February 5th, 1981. Show kicks off with a pretty typical 3-song open introduction for Jerry Garcia Band. Back in those days, How Sweet It Is, Catfish John, That's What Love Will Make You Do. And absolutely nothing wrong with that because those are 3 spectacular tunes. Now the cream of the crop, as far as looking at those 3 songs, the best they were ever played in succession was at Music Mountain, June 16th, 1982. The band just rocked completely all 3 of those songs, top-notch versions. On this night in Lehigh, it gets off to a little bit of a slow start. How Sweet It Is kind of a warm-up. Nothing crazy going on inside there. Just a nice little warm-up, How Sweet It Is. Get everybody in the mood, get the band in the mood. And then Jerry makes his move in Catfish. The guitar work in Catfish John is excellent on this version. And you hear Jimmy Warren takes a little bit of a lead on electric piano. And basically Melvin he's doing some lead stuff, but it's mostly background. He isn't as prominent in the sound yet, but his sound definitely makes a difference. Just fills up, brought so much more texture to the music, and it sounds great on Catfish John. And then That's a Love Will Make You Do follows. Pretty good version, standard. But then the show will start picking up with the fourth song. They get into a little... the fourth song of the first set, they do 2 sets on this night. They get a little Blood on the Tracks sandwich going with Simple Twist of Fate, Chuck Berry in the middle, Let It Rock, and then Tangled Up in Blue to close the set out. So the Simple Twist of Fate is simply gorgeous. I mean, Jerry just sings his heart out on it. And it's so interesting how he reinterprets these Dylan songs, or really anybody's doing. But Dylan's version's reflective, but it's also kind of dynamic and right at you, very powerful, where this is extremely laid back, somber, reflective. It totally captures the mood of what Dylan was trying to get at, but just a completely different musical landscape. Very slow. It almost comes to a stop. This is one song where it's almost impossible for a Deadhead to dance to, even though I'm sure Deadheads were up and dancing during Simple Twist of Fate too, but almost impossible. Just a very dirge-like slow tempo. But man, Jerry really sings it amazingly. Beautiful guitar work, a lot of yearning and heartfelt leads in there. John Conn has his long bass solo in Simple Twist of Fate. Jerry used to enjoy that. He enjoyed listening to it. He also enjoyed stepping off to the side, having a cigarette, a very relaxed mood. But when Jerry comes back, pours 1,000% soul into it. And very, very cool version. It ends up at the end of Simple Twist of Fates, where there was a pretty good rocking ending. Usually they brought it to an end. And then the rocking continues with Let It Rock. Perfect Bethlehem tribute to the working man. So the second solo, Jerry breaks out the steel drive and hammer. It's just an awesome second instrumental in there. And, just when Let It Rock, when you hear something like that, and the place where it's played, Bethlehem, very interesting city at that time, going through quite a transition. Bethlehem Steel, one of the biggest manufacturers in United States history, was on the way down. It was 1981, 1982. They reported a loss of $1.5 billion. So they were closing out most of their operations. So around this time, a very conflicted time in history for Bethlehem. It was pretty depressing for the working man because a lot of people were getting laid off. And, Let It Rock definitely hits the note. Jerry with a rocking tribute to the working men of Bethlehem. And just the Lehigh Valley is such an interesting place because it's so, on one hand, so beautiful place where you have an amazing school like Lehigh set in a beautiful, and then right down the road is Bethlehem Steel and those big steel stacks. And that place was the backbone of America, even more so than like Allentown, which was pretty close, just that whole area. Bethlehem Steel produced a lot of the ammunitions and warships that helped America win 2 world wars, and their steel went into things like the George Washington Bridge, the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building. So it's Bethlehem Steel is an essential part of American history. Getting back to the night of February 5th in the Jerry Garcia Band, after rocking out that last great solo in Let It Rock, Tangled Up in Blue ends the set. One of the most iconic Jerry Garcia Band songs on this version is good, nothing spectacular, but this show does end up I ranking it as one of the best of all time. So the first set, above average, great song selection. But the second set is where everything happens, and just as good a little set as you can have, and that's what propels this to being one of the greatest shows of all time. So in preparation for this podcast, it was a treat to hear the show again. It must have been like 6-7 years since I heard this show in its entirety. And I guess that's because with the Grateful Dead, we have access to everything at our fingertips. You got the re-listen app, archive.org. You could pull up any show you want anytime. Not as easy with the Jerry Garcia band. If you want to listen to the show, this is where I listen to it, because I don't listen to my CDs anymore. I went to YouTube, typed in Jerry Garcia Band 2581, and there's the whole show is there. Also, I have a Positively Garcia page on YouTube. You could subscribe or just go there and check out tunes. What I basically do, I don't do a whole show. I'll take out the highlights, the noteworthy, essential songs, and upload them to my page. From this show, I got the Sugary up there, and also when I pay my masterpiece, which they do in the second set. So set 2 opens up with Sugary, the first and only Grateful Dead song of the night, and wow, this is a killer version. So great first solo. It's got the right feel. This second solo, man, Garcia peels away at the sugary onion. All kinds of, different licks, but kind of like a mathematical, quick picking approach to it. Pretty awesome. And also, he works a part of the fretboard that I never heard him work in a Sugary before. It's definitely a standout. That second solo is awesome. And I knew that before I was listening to it. So I'm listening to the Sugary again. And I was kind of surprised at how long that third solo was. It's a really good third instrumental too. So this is top-notch, one of the best Garcia band Sugarys. But wow, that second solo, man, it will make your head spin. Great stuff. So you're starting off the second set with a hot Sugary, and put everybody in Bethlehem, Lehigh University in the mood. And then at that point, everybody turns into a little bit of a dance party. Garcia just rips into The Harder They Come. And of course, Melvin Seal's keyboards here are essential. Band's cooking, nice long version. Another iconic Jerry Garcia band song through the years, Harder They Come. And then the next song, they're back into Dylan's, another Dylan tune, When I Pay My Masterpiece. And boy, does Jerry, this is one of the great masterpieces. Love this version. When Dylan wrote a brilliant song here with Masterpiece. And when I listen to the band versions and Dylan's version, I just think Jerry there's so much to Masterpiece, so much in those great lyrics. And he just slows it up and digs in and savors everything. And that's the key to his greatness. No rush. Check out how great this song is. He kind of frames every lyric. And then in Masterpiece, just these ripping guitar solos. So Masterpiece, it totally does it justice. Jerry does it justice on this evening, and every evening he played it, whether it was electric or acoustic. And going from a Dylan band kind of number, they go into another band song, nice flow there, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. And man, the way Jerry sings this, I've mentioned this before, if there's one thing where Garcia did not get enough credit, it's as a singer, a vocalist. He's unbelievable. One of the greatest singers I've ever heard in my life. And he just, people don't put him up on that pedestal for the singing. Deadhead Worlds maybe, but sometimes not even there. But this night they drove Old Dixie Down, just to hear him sing this, it's so heartfelt and brilliant. I listened to the band. The band version's good, but I have trouble loving it just because I was brought up on this Jerry Garcia band version, And in 1981, I think he sings the sweetest Night They Drove Old Dixies Down. His voice was just on this year, 82. Great years for Jerry singing. So excellent version of Dixie Down. And just the song flow here. I mean, that's the thing with the Jerry Garcia band. Jerry picked out the right tunes. You know, he knew the right tunes to pick out and how to line them up. And I don't think you could say this in 72 or 77. Obviously, Grateful Dead shows were bigger than the Jerry Garcia band shows of those days. But as the early 80s rolled around, these amazing Jerry Garcia band shows, in a lot of ways, were more satisfying than seeing the Dead, even though the Grateful Dead could definitely go places that the Garcia band could never dream of going. Grateful Dead is a different experience, and the anticipation and the possibility was always greater. But for just pure excellence, guaranteed, Jerry Garcia band shows in the early '80s were where it's at. So after Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, Dear Prudence. Now, Jerry first did, I think his first Prudence was 1979, maybe with Reconstruction. I'm pretty sure that's correct. And this is before John Lennon was killed in front of the Dakota. So it's kind of ironic that he came out with this song a year before Lennon's death. To me, nothing captures the essence of John Lennon like Dear Prudence. Every time I heard Jerry sing Dear Prudence, I would picture that the photo of Lennon from the White Album. It would just pop up in my mind right away. And this was, especially poignant because you got, this is only 2 months after John Lennon was assassinated. So, it's just a tribute, but incredibly sad. And in Positively Garcia, I titled this chapter Prudence Tears. Jerry just digs in, and his guitar is just crying, but it's one of the most definitely touching Prudence solos. I would put up there as one of the best versions, but I heard of other ones where he goes off more, where it's like more joyous, more of a celebration. But this was, it hit the spot. It was, you couldn't be too celebratory because John had just been taken from us 2 months earlier in a senseless shooting. And then just so much that these songs lined up in a row. You're going from Hunter to Jimmy Cliff to Dylan to Robbie Robertson to John Lennon. Ridiculous. It's an amazing presentation, and wrapped up with one of the happiest songs to leave any show, Midnight Moonlight, Peter Rowan, or bring you back to Old in the Way days. And another very cool version to wrap up one of the great sets. When Jerry did two set shows, it was rarely an encore after it. He would usually do the encore if it was only a one set show. But on this night, he just gave so much, so great, so much jamming going on. And I'm sure everybody in Stabler Arena was more than thrilled with this great performance. Definitely, if you haven't heard it, go to that YouTube page. Either check out the select versions or go for the whole thing. February 5th, 1981, Jerry Garcia Band kills it. Before I move on to the Grateful Dead show on September 25th, I would just like to touch upon the incredible road adventure of Jerry Garcia in the year 1981, going back and forth between playing with the Jerry Garcia Band and the Grateful Dead, all the traveling that he went through that year. And instead of just going off the top of my head with that, I'm going to read from my book, Positively Garcia, because I got facts and figures in there. And it's just unbelievable, the life of a rock star, but especially what Garcia did this year. Here we go. Garcia's travels in 1981 were pure madness of an unprecedented nature. It all began in January with a Jerry Garcia Band West Coast tour. In February, JGB barnstormed intimate venues on the East Coast before swinging back to San Francisco for 3 shows. Frequent flyer points were accumulating. The Grateful Dead tour commenced with 3 nights in Chicago at the end of February, and March began with 2 dates in Cleveland, followed by a short East Coast tour that ended in Hartford. The Dead then flew across the Atlantic for 4 shows in England and one with The Who in West Germany. These were their first European appearances in 7 years. When they returned to the Bay Area, Garcia slacked off a little by only scheduling 5 Jerry Garcia Band gigs for April. Then the Dead headed east for their annual spring tour in May, and JGB closed the month with a West Coast run. Then Garcia slacked off again, only performing 3 JGB shows in June. In July, by the way, we're still talking about 1981, the Grateful Dead rolled through a Midwest tour, and for good measure, the JGB crew played a few more in California. Between August and the middle of September, Jerry lingered out west for 2 short runs with the Grateful Dead, and of course, JGB shows were sprinkled in before, after, and in between the Dead shows. As September rolled to its chronological conclusion, the Grateful Dead headed east for gigs in Lehigh, Buffalo, and Landover. Just as they had done in May, the boys followed an East Coast swing with a European tour. Deja vu all over again. After playing in Amsterdam and Paris, the Grateful Dead ended their 13-show rendezvous in Barcelona, Spain on October 19th. It was the first and only time Senor Garcia played in the land of his ancestors. Believe it or not, this is where the craziness kicks in. 6 days after leaving Barcelona and traveling halfway across the globe, JGB put on a show at Keystone Palo Alto. 4 days later, the Jerry Garcia Band schlepped their act back to the East Coast to launch a tour at the Tower Theater in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. After several triumphant performances, including the 11/4/81 Albany show, JGB closed the tour out with performances in Chicago and Denver. 10 days later, the Grateful Dead were in Pittsburgh to launch a 7-day tour of the Heartland that ended in Des Moines, Iowa, on the 40th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. Before the band performed their annual New Year's run at the Oakland Auditorium, JGB would do 3 more gigs in the Bay Area. As Jerry sang in Roadrunner, "Money, who needs it? I live a life free and easy. A toothbrush in my hand. Let me be a traveling man. I'm a Roadrunner, baby." And that was definitely Jerry's motto for sure. And maybe that's why the man loved to travel, play music wherever, whenever. And maybe that's why he came back to Lehigh in 1981 with the Grateful Dead. It's definitely a great arena, and Bethlehem, Pennsylvania is just such an intriguing town to visit. I mean, to this day, I love going there. They got the steel stacks where Bethlehem Steel used to be. It's all abandoned, but it's the coolest looking thing. They do Oktoberfest in front of it. They have bands there. They've incorporated the history of Bethlehem into the town. Amazing thing. There's also, I think I said there's a casino out there. Wind Creek there's a nice arena. I saw Santana play there. So Bethlehem's a great place to visit. Jerry went back there with the Grateful Dead and the whole crew in 1981. That must have been a pretty wild scene. Grateful Dead were getting pretty big. 1981, a huge year for the Grateful Dead, for their little 3-show swing before heading out to Europe. And I'm not going to spend as much time on this show. I could wrap it up by grading it. This is a performance, a song selection of Dreams, the way it all came together. If I was at this show, I might have left it thinking it was like the greatest show ever. The song selection is so good. So A+ song selection for 925, Stabler Arena, Lehigh, Grateful Dead. Performance, probably a B. There's no goats or no scapegoats. By no goats, no greatest of all time versions, but nothing on the other hand that wasn't an off night at all. Everything was pretty good, but a lot of middle, medium performances, very few sensational standout performances, but just an incredible set list here. They opened up with Minglewood, had a little trouble getting the Bobby's microphone, got that straightened out. Strong Friend of the Devil, El Paso, Sweet Peggy-O, nice Rooster Jam. Birdsong was pretty hot. But as this is materializing, as I'm saying these songs, these are all songs I craved when I would see the Dead in the 80s. And then we get to the Working Man's Tribute for Bethlehem, Beat It Down the Line, and Cumberland Blues. And of course, Cumberland Blues is a song everybody's always super excited to see. And then Passenger, man, this is just like a song that for a couple of years they played it so well, and I loved it so much. I never got to see it live. But if you want to hear a great Passenger, I think the best one they ever did was November 10th, 79, Chrysler Arena. Just an insane Passenger. But I don't know how they lost the love for this song that Phil wrote and Garcia went off, Bobby tune. But yeah, so Passenger, but not a great version here. The guitar jam kind of ended a little shorter than usual. Good Althea follows, and this is what I'm saying. These are like all such desirable songs. And they did close the set with a showstopper, Music Never Stopped. And it's actually an excellent version. Might be close to a top 10. It's that good. Garcia is just in repetitive lick heaven, shredding, and they really went the extra mile with this. 1981 was a pretty good year for Music Never Stopped. A couple other versions I could recommend from this particular year. Oklahoma, the Zoo, 7/5/81. And the very first show of the year, Uptown Theater, Chicago, just a ridiculous Music Never Stopped in the first set there. But this Lehigh one is great, definitely a standout version. So a great way to end the set. A lot of songs and great song selection, great flow. Second set, same exact thing. All songs you would hear. You look at the set list, you're like, my God, this is a great show. Just missed the mark as far as the performance-wise. So they open up with Might As Well, a song which had just recently been returned to the lineup over the summer. They took a break from it after 1977, so I guess it's like a 4-year break. Might As Well is back, cool second set opener, rock into Samson and Delilah. And then you thought you might have been missed the window of opportunity for Scarlet, Begonia's Fire on the Mountain. But after Might As Well, Samson, Delilah, they give you the Scarlet Fire. And the best part of this is the Scarlet outro, pretty hot. But, for Scarlet Fire, a little tame, not long, well played, but definitely not they didn't dig in and do a long version there. Then Brent checks in with Good Time Blues, a little advice, never trust a woman who wears her pants too tight. And, at this point, you got 5 songs, and then they do a whole Sailor Saint after that. So it's 7 songs before drums. Good version of Sailor Saint. But if you want to hear a sensational version, just 2 nights later, they played it at the Capps Center. Now, that was a great Sailor Saint. Ended the first set in the Capps Center, 9:27. So after the 7 songs, we get a little drum space. Solid version of The Wheel. Very hot Sugar Mag, kind of like a surprise spot to catch it. And instead of doing Sunshine Daydream, they broke into Black Peter. And I love that. I think the Dead should have done that a little more. I really enjoy when they would cut into Sugar Mag and then skip the Sunshine Daydream, put a couple songs in. And then when they would come back and hit you with the Sunshine Daydream later, it was like a shock. It was pretty cool. So always interesting when they did it that way. So Wheel, Sugar Mag, good Black Peter, Around and Round, and then they kick it with the Sunshine Daydream and a U.S. Blues Encore. That entire second set, nothing really stood out as being great, but they never lost any momentum. It was a good solid show. Nothing. You're gonna go rewind the jam because it was so hot. So definitely a great show, man. I mean, Lehigh must have been on fire after that all that night with all the Deadheads up on that beautiful campus. Definitely, I guess the word for that show on September 25th, the best word, joyous. And basically that was it for the Grateful Dead and Deadheads in Lehigh University. That's the last time the Dead or Jerry Garcia band played there. I guess it's a beautiful campus, and as big as the Grateful Dead were in 1981, it just must have been too much, too overwhelming for a place like Stabler Arena and a campus like that to host the beautiful, massive carnival that was the Grateful Dead. And that's it for episode 9 of the Deadology podcast. I'm your host, Howard Weiner. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, just a couple things here. I have that Positively Garcia page where a lot of great versions, a lot of very cool Jerry Garcia band stuff up there. You might want to check that out. Also, my podcasts are there as well as on Apple and anywhere you Spotify, all that stuff. Subscribe if you like. It's free and it's going to be weekly. I'm going to be coming back every week with these podcasts. My books are available on Amazon. Several books on the Grateful Dead, including, well, Positively Garcia is a Jerry Garcia band book, but we got the Deadology books and Dylan and the Grateful Dead, a whole bunch, Europe 72 Revisited. Those are also available on my website, Tangled Up in Tunes. You got pictures of the books there lined up like pretty maids in a row. But yep, we'll be back next week. A lot of interesting stuff. October's my favorite month of, I think the Grateful Dead played more great shows in October and a lot of interesting stuff to look forward to. Thanks for listening. Keep on keeping on. Peace out.
Thank you. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back in just a few minutes, so everybody hang loose.